Across the United States, Black Americans make up about 13.7% of the population. In every state on this list, the Black population is far below that national share, even when a few cities have real Black communities. When I say whitest, I'm talking about the numbers, not saying every person there is racist. A lot of people in these states would treat you fairly, help you out, and hate seeing their home reduced to one ugly label. Today, we're counting down the top 10 whitest states in the U.S. where Black people may feel unwelcome. Comment your state below, especially if you have lived, worked, studied, or traveled through a place like this. Number 10, Iowa. Iowa is built around cornfields, state fairs, quiet neighborhoods, college towns, affordable houses, and Friday night football. Des Moines feels very different from the rural counties around it, with Black churches, state government jobs, insurance offices, and a larger professional network. Waterloo has one of Iowa's strongest Black histories, while Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, Davenport, Ames, and Council Bluffs bring more diversity than many small towns nearby. Statewide, Iowa is about 89% white alone and about 4.8% Black alone. In a rural district, a Black student may still go through most of the week without seeing another Black face in class. That kind of isolation changes how a child hears a comment, a joke, a nickname, or a teacher's decision to move on. ACLU Iowa reported in 2023 that Black people in Iowa were 9.1 times more likely than white people to be put in prison. Axios reported that Iowa's Black-white prison disparity fell from 13.6 to 1 in 2007 to 9.3 to 1 by 2019, which shows progress and still leaves a serious gap. That kind of disparity becomes personal when a father watches his teenage son drive across a county line and hopes the traffic stop stays ordinary. Housing can look easier in Iowa than in coastal states, but lower prices do not automatically create equal access or social belonging. A Black family can afford a house in a small town and still wonder whether the neighborhood is ready to see them as neighbors. Bettendorf became part of that concern after a lawsuit alleged racist bullying involving Pleasant Valley students, including blackface, slurs, and a mock execution of a Black student. That case does not define every Iowa school, and many parents in the state would be disgusted by behavior like that. Still, one case can change how Black families read a district brochure, especially when their child may be one of very few Black students in the building. Des Moines and Waterloo have real Black communities, but families outside those networks may have a harder time finding support when something goes wrong. Number 9, North Dakota. A job can get you to North Dakota, whether it comes through oil work, the military, nursing, trucking, construction, or a university program. For some Black workers, the paycheck looks promising at first, especially in a state where labor shortages have opened doors in places like Fargo, Williston, Grand Forks, and Minot. The harder part comes after the job offer, when rent, distance, winter, and a thin Black community start shaping daily life. North Dakota is wheat fields, oil rigs, small cities, cold weather, military bases, and a work-first culture that can feel hard to enter. Fargo has the most urban feel, while Grand Forks has a major university and military presence nearby. Bismarck carries state government, Minot has the Air Force Base, and Williston still carries the memory of the Bakken oil boom. Statewide, North Dakota is about 85.7% white alone and about 4% Black alone. That statewide share can still feel very different once someone lands outside Fargo, Grand Forks, Bismarck, or Minot. Fargo is not the same as Tioga, and Grand Forks is not the same as a remote oil field road after dark. During the oil boom, Williston drew national attention for housing costs. Average rent above $2,300 for a small one-bedroom apartment. The EEOC sued Murex Petroleum, a company operating in Tioga, alleging that an African-American employee faced racial abuse and a hostile work environment. AP reporting on the case said coworkers directed racial slurs and derogatory comments at the employee, while a supervisor allegedly witnessed the harassment and did not stop it. A CLU analysis found Black people were about 10% of North Dakota's prison population, while making up about 3% of the adult population in 2017. A Black nurse in Fargo may find more community than a welder sent to an oil town 2 hours away from everything familiar. Plenty of North Dakotans are decent, welcoming, and proud of treating workers fairly. A good paycheck can solve one problem while leaving a person far from the community that helps them recover from the rest. The job may bring you there, but the silence may send you somewhere else. Number 8. West Virginia. Black history in West Virginia is not a side note. even if modern outsiders often talk about the state as if it has always been almost entirely white. Coal, railroads, company towns, black churches, segregated schools, and union struggles all brought black families into the mountains. West Virginia's black population grew from about 25,800 in 1880 to nearly 115,000 by 1930. Black workers made up more than 20% of the state's mining labor force from the 1890s into the early 20th century. That history lives in places like Charleston, Huntington, Bluefield, Beckley, Keystone, Hinton, and the old coal towns of McDowell County. Charleston has one of the state's strongest black communities, while Huntington has Marshall University, rail history, and a more visible black presence than many counties nearby. Bluefield and Beckley carry older coalfield roots, and Morgantown brings university diversity into a state that can feel very rural very fast. Statewide, West Virginia is about 92.6% white alone and about 3.9% black alone. Black people are part of West Virginia's story, but that history is not evenly visible across the map today. A black family in Charleston may find churches, barbers, neighbors, and civic groups that make life feel rooted. The same family driving through a rural county after dark may feel the mood change at a gas station that has never had to think much about black travelers. West Virginia's median gross rent is around $872, but lower rent does not erase social isolation or racial disparity. The West Virginia Center on Budget and Policy reported that black people made up 3.5% of the state population, but 11.7% of the state prison population. The same report said African Americans were incarcerated in West Virginia prisons at 3.5 times the imprisonment rate of whites. In a small county, prison and policing disparities do not feel distant when everybody knows who got stopped, who got charged, and whose kid was labeled trouble. Number 7. Oregon. Oregon is about 84.9% white alone and about 2.5% black alone. That share may be close to Maine's, but Oregon's history gives the number a very different weight. Portland has the deepest black community infrastructure, while Eugene, Salem, Gresham, Beaverton, Hillsborough, Bend, Medford, and Ashland all offer different versions of Oregon life. In 1857, Oregon voters approved an exclusion clause that prohibited black people from being in the state, owning property, and making contracts. That was written into the state's foundation. Earlier exclusion laws, including the 1844 Lash Law, also shaped Oregon's reputation as a place designed to discourage black settlement. Still, written exclusion helped shape who settled there, who owned land, and where black communities were allowed to grow. Portland's Albina neighborhood became the center of black life after wartime migration and the Vanport flood. City history notes that 73% of Portland's black population was once concentrated in Albina. Urban renewal, highway projects, hospital expansion, and rising housing costs later tore through that community. A renter may not say black exclusion law every time rent is due. Oregon's eviction research keeps the concern current, with black renters reported as more than twice as likely as white renters to face eviction filings in early 2024. Oregon's Department of Justice also reported that its bias hotline received 3,623 calls in 2023, a 25% increase from the year before. Bias reports do not all involve black residents, but anti-race bias has been the largest category in state reporting. For a black worker, Bend can look like opportunity and still feel socially thin. A student in Eugene may find organizations on campus and still feel watched in certain off-campus spaces. A black traveler passing through Grants Pass, Klamath Falls, rural eastern Oregon, or small coastal towns may be thinking about history even when nobody else is. Oregon has black churches, artists, organizers, business owners, and families who have fought hard to build community. The postcard says welcome, but history asks to whom? Number 6. Maine. A black professional can move to Maine for a job and realize within the first month that every basic comfort takes extra planning. A barber may be an hour away, a familiar church may be in another city, and a social event with other black adults may depend on living near Portland or Lewiston. Maine has rocky coastline, lobster boats, pine forests, lighthouses, older towns, and quiet roads that look peaceful from a distance. Portland has the state's strongest black and immigrant community infrastructure. Lewiston and Auburn have important Somali, African immigrant, and Muslim communities that change the state's modern racial story. Statewide, Maine is about 93.2% white alone and about 2.5% black alone. That share is close to Oregon's, but outside Portland, Lewiston, Auburn, and a few college or hospital communities, the state can become very white very quickly. The statewide median gross rent is around $1,139. But housing pressure is much sharper near Portland and the southern coast. A black nurse, teacher, or city worker may get the job first, then discover that housing, distance, and community are the harder parts of staying. A Maine racial disparities report found that only 28% of black Mainers owned their homes, compared with 76% of white Mainers. It shows up when one family builds equity and another keeps writing rent checks with nothing to pass down. In 2002, then Mayor Laurier Raymond sent an open letter asking Somali residents to discourage more Somalis from moving to the city. A P later described how that letter generated national attention and prompted an out-of-state white supremacist group to hold a rally. Local people also pushed back, and a much larger counter-response supported the newcomers. Even when a city changes for the better, the memory of being treated like a burden can stay with the people who lived through it. The pressure remains when black community is spread across long drives, small towns, and a few bigger cities. The water is beautiful, but a person can still feel stranded. Number 5, New Hampshire. Portsmouth looks like the kind of place where a night out should feel easy. Brick sidewalks, old buildings, restaurants, tourists, and the water nearby give the city a polished New England calm. Then an alleged assault outside a diner becomes a civil rights case, and that polished calm starts feeling more complicated. New Hampshire is often seen through quiet towns, good schools, low taxes, mountain weekends, and independent politics. Manchester and Nashua have the state's largest city feel, while Concord, Dover, Portsmouth, Keene, and Lebanon carry government, college, hospital, and service sector communities. New Hampshire is about 92.3% white alone and about 2.1% black alone. Black community exists in New Hampshire, but it is narrow enough that moving outside Manchester, Nashua, or a few college areas can feel like a different state. Manchester may offer more black neighbors, churches, barbers, and social networks than a small town in the White Mountains. Nashua can feel different from a rural county where one black family becomes everybody's diversity reference point. AP reported that New Hampshire's Civil Rights Unit received 187 complaints in 2022, up from 40 complaints in 2018. Portsmouth became a clear example after the state filed civil rights charges against a former police officer accused of a race-motivated assault on Mamadou Demblay, a black bank executive. The case involved allegations of racial and national origin motivation after a Thanksgiving Eve encounter outside Gilly's Diner. One case cannot speak for every resident in Portsmouth, but it can change how black residents read the city. Still, black residents understand why a case involving a black professional, a former officer, and a downtown restaurant hits differently. A hotel lobby can feel normal until the front desk starts asking questions nobody else got. A mountain town can feel charming until you realize your kid may be the only black child in the room all winter. New Hampshire has residents, business leaders, and local groups who have publicly pushed back against hate. When the black population is small, one incident can echo longer because fewer people nearby understand why it changes the whole mood. Number 4, Vermont. Vermont looks gentle from the outside, with maple sugar, ski weekends, covered bridges, dairy farms, college campuses, and farmers markets. Burlington has the state's strongest urban center, and Winooski has become more diverse through immigrant and refugee communities. Rutland, Brattleboro, Bennington, Middlebury, Montpelier, and Stowe each carry different versions of small state life. Vermont is about 93.2% white alone and about 1.7% black alone. Many black students, workers, and families move through daily life knowing they may be the only black person in the room again. In a rural school, one black student may become the unofficial spokesperson, the classroom example, and the target when racist language appears. The Department of Justice reached a settlement with the Elmore-Morristown School District in 2025 after investigating racial harassment of black and biracial students. Federal officials described harassment that included racial slurs, Nazi salutes, Confederate flags, and other racially charged behavior. Local reporting said the investigation reviewed complaints and records from several school years. That is more than bullying. It is a climate a child has to walk into every morning. Woodstock also became part of the conversation after a black student's family reached a settlement over alleged repeated racist bullying during the 2021-22 school year. One case does not define every Vermont classroom. Still, parents remember which districts handled racism only after pressure arrived. A mother may leave a school meeting wondering whether her child is safe or simply expected to stay quiet, so the town can keep feeling nice. A Vermont sentencing analysis found similarly situated black defendants were more likely than white defendants to receive incarceration sentences, with especially large gaps in felony property and felony drug cases. Plenty of Vermonters are working hard to make schools and towns safer, and black families have built real community there. When the black population is this small, one school incident can follow a child far beyond the hallway where it happened. Vermont's quiet can feel peaceful at first until something happens, and that same quiet starts feeling like nobody is coming to help. Number 3, Wyoming. Wyoming is huge distance, open land, Yellowstone, the Tetons, rodeos, ranches, coal towns, oil fields, and roadside stops that sit far apart. Wyoming has fewer than 600,000 residents, so even a small percentage can mean a very small real-life community. Wyoming is about 92.1% white alone and about 1.2% black alone. In some towns, a black resident is not just underrepresented, but moving through daily life with very little visible community nearby. The median gross rent is around $992, but distance can turn haircuts, church, groceries, and social life into extra planning. A barber in Cheyenne does not help much if you live hours away near an energy job. Wyoming's black history is more visible than many people realize, especially through the Black 14 at the University of Wyoming. In October 1969, Wyoming's head football coach dismissed 14 black players after they wanted to wear black armbands before a game against BYU. The players were protesting racial policies they associated with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints at the time. That incident turned Laramie into a national civil rights story. For a black student today, that story can still shape how campus belonging feels. ACLU Wyoming reported that black adults in the state were imprisoned at nearly 5 times the rate of white adults in 2015. The same report said black adults were about 1% of the adult population, but 5% of the prison population. With so few black residents statewide, a prison disparity like that does not feel distant. A traffic stop outside Cheyenne or Casper can stay in someone's chest for the next 10 miles. A black worker in an energy town may respect the paycheck and still spend weekends wondering where to feel normal. A family visiting Jackson may enjoy the resort economy, then feel less relaxed at a rural gas station farther east. Wyoming has plenty of people who value fairness and privacy, but being left alone is not always the same as being welcomed. The land is wide open while the social room can feel much smaller. Number 2, Idaho. Coeur d'Alene made national headlines in 2024 after a visiting basketball team reported racial harassment during March Madness. The Utah women's basketball team was staying in the area during the NCAA tournament when members of the team reported racial slurs near their hotel. Police later said audio evidence captured a racial slur clearly enough to be heard. The team moved hotels, and the story traveled far beyond Idaho. For black travelers and residents, that kind of incident may not feel like one random bad night, especially in a state with a documented extremist history in North Idaho. Boise has the strongest black community infrastructure in the state, while Meridian, Nampa, Caldwell, and the Treasure Valley have grown quickly. Moscow has the University of Idaho, Pocatello has Idaho State University, and Mountain Home has military ties. Coeur d'Alene, Idaho Falls, Twin Falls, and North Idaho can carry a different meaning for black travelers who know the state's history. Statewide, Idaho is about 92.1% white alone and about 1.1% black alone. In many towns, a black resident does not just stand out. They may also struggle to find visible black community nearby. The Aryan Nations compound near Hayden Lake made Kootenai County nationally known as a white supremacist gathering point for years. A 2000 Idaho jury awarded a $6.3 million civil judgment connected to an attack by Aryan Nations guards, helping bankrupt the organization. Local human rights groups and residents fought that history with real courage. Idaho State Police reported 68 hate crimes in 2024, a 21% increase from the previous year. Boise State Public Radio reported that racial bias was the most common motive category and made up 42% of those offenses. Most incidents were reported in Boise, which may reflect population size and stronger reporting systems. Many Idahoans have spent years fighting the extremist image outsiders attach to the state. That does not erase the tension some black residents and travelers describe when history, headlines, and daily life start overlapping. The welcome sign may say Idaho, but the feeling may say, watch yourself. Number 1, Montana. Montana looks like freedom from the highway, with glacier, Yellowstone country, ranch land, fly fishing, ski towns, and roads that seem to run forever. Missoula feels artsy and college-centered, while Bozeman has grown fast with university life, tech money, tourism, and an expensive outdoor lifestyle. Billings is the largest city, and Great Falls, Helena, Butte, Kalispell, Whitefish, and the Flathead Valley each carry a different local reputation. Montana is about 88.7% white alone and about 0.7% black alone. Black residents make up less than 1% of Montana, so in many rooms, you do not just walk in, like you stand out. A school play, a doctor's office, a ski lift, or a county courthouse can make one person feel like the visible exception. The statewide median home value is around $375,800, and the median gross rent is around $1,081. In places like Bozeman and Whitefish, housing costs can rise faster than a newcomer's ability to build a real circle. A black worker can get a strong job offer and still spend months trying to find affordable housing, familiar spaces, and people who do not treat them like a curiosity. Black people made up about 3% of Montana's prison population, while being about 1% of the adult population. In a tiny black community, one arrest or sentencing story can travel fast and stay in people's minds. The Southern Poverty Law Center won a judgment of more than $14 million against Daily Stormer founder Andrew Anglin after an online harassment campaign targeted Tanya Gersh and her family in Whitefish. A black traveler hearing about extremist harassment in Whitefish may think differently about hotels, gas stations, restaurants, and who would step in if something happened. Local residents pushed back against hate, and that part of Montana's story should not be erased. When black community is this small, even a normal problem can feel heavier because fewer people understand it without a long explanation. The mountains are beautiful, but the feeling in your stomach may not be. This list isn't permission to hate entire states, and it is not a claim that every white resident in these places is hostile. Have you ever visited a state where you felt watched the moment you walked in? Drop the state, city, or town below and tell us what happened. Like the video and subscribe for more videos like this. See you in the next one.